Okay, so let us look at the first step on the journey to Spring Framework. Let us create a very basic application. The simplest way to do that is actually go to Spring Initializer website and create a very simple application from there. So let us do that. So we go to this website, which is start.spring.io, and this is the website. Now here we can choose, we choose a Maven project. We are choosing 2.4.0. Group is because my blog is at springframework.in, so I will choose in.springframework.learning. Let us say we start with that. Artifact, let us call it tutorial. And the package name is alright. Packaging is jar. Java we can choose version 8. Now we can start without any dependencies, but just for future thing I will add MySQL and I will add Redis. We do not really need to do this, we can add them later, it is just adding Maven things. So, but we will still add it, and we say generate. Once we generate it, it downloads it to zip file which contains our project. We take that zip file and unzip it into a directory, a work directory, where we will be building the rest of the application. Now that we have downloaded the tutorial.zip and unzipped it in a directory, let us run IntelliJ and open the project there. So now let us open the project in IntelliJ. So we say file open, and then we choose the directory where we have unzipped the project. And we say open. We can choose, if you already have some projects open, you can say new window, so that it will open them in a different one. And now it will take some time for it to open. So this is our project, and if you can see down here, it is still running the Maven dependencies resolution. So let it finish its job. It will take a little while for it to do that. Once it is done, you will see this directory called tutorial. Once that directory shows up, it is done, and we can go inside the Java directory, and if you see, it has just created a tutorial application which launches a Spring Boot application. If you really see, it does not do anything. If you just run it, it basically will really not do anything. I have just executed it. See, it does not even, it runs it and it exits it because there is nothing for it to do. So now let us go and add a dummy REST endpoint to make sure we have something functional, so that we can make it a little bit useful. Before we do that, let us think a little bit about how we are going to structure this project. And if you see, the base package for it is in.springframework.learning.tutorial. So we will ask Spring Boot application to scan that path, so that any services or any component that we define, they are made aware to the projects. So to do that, we just say scan base packages equal to, and then we put this curly braces, and within that we can write the class package name in.spring Springframework learning.tutorials tutorial. We can just actually pick it up from the top here. This is the package that we want it to be scanned, and we can just copy paste so that there are no mistakes. Many times there is a small typo and you will not see any error, but nothing will work. So, you have to be a little careful here. So, now we have set our application. Now, let us define a very basic endpoint. Before we define a basic endpoint, we need an object that will represent our JSON. So, it is a good idea to split them into separate packages. So, let us create a new package called Pojos. Pojos is nothing but plain old Java objects, and this Pojos package will contain all the objects that we will send across the REST endpoint, and within that let us create a hello world object. Let us call it hello world Pojo, and let us say this contains few things. Let us say we have private string name, and then I think to start with that is kind of enough, and we can also define a private string message which is let us call it hello world. We initialize it to that, and then what we can do is we can define getters and setters, and within IntelliJ there is a simple way to do it. You can just go to generate and say getters and setters and select the attributes for which you want getters and setters and say OK, and it will create them. Now, we also want to probably define a couple of constructors. We need a default constructor which basically the name is set to empty string, and the message also we can set it to basically the percentage will be replaced by a null string, or we can actually make it, if you do not provide any name, it will become hello world everybody, and then we can make it name here. And then we define another constructor and we can do same thing for the message. So, this is our Pojo that we want to send across our REST endpoint, and now we need a getter and setter for this particular Pojo. So, let us start with let us create a new package where we will put this. So, we say new package, let us call it endpoints, and within that we create a new endpoint called hello world endpoint. So, now let us define the endpoint, and basically the very simple thing that we need to do to define an endpoint is create the endpoint class and annotate it with the REST controller. This is where sometimes I have seen that in your Maven dependencies the Spring Boot starter web is not added. So, make sure this is part of it. Basically Spring Boot starter web should be the part of your Maven dependencies for REST controller to be available to you. Now, the second thing that we need to do is what is the path at which this particular endpoint will be accessible. So, right now we will just say you can use request mapping for it. It defines what will be the path. So, you can say hello. So, hello is our path, and to start with we just define a very simple get endpoint, request mapping, we can say method equal to request method dot get comma produces media type dot JSON So there are two. When you go to media type, you will find two JSON things. One will be the JSON and one will be the JSON value. Because we are interested in the string here, we will use application JSON value, and that will essentially tell us that this particular endpoint produces JSON. If you are writing an endpoint that produces HTTP, HTML or any other format like XML, this is where you have to define them, and we will look at those later. Now we say public, optional, and we know this thing is going to return the POJO that we just defined. So let us call it hello world POJO, and let us call it the method is called get hello, and here we can just define hello world POJO h equal to new hello world POJO, and let us say the name is John Doe, and you can just say return optional dot off h. So if you see, this is a very basic endpoint that we have just written. We can run this particular, we can go to our main application and run it. So see, now this particular thing is working, and let us test it. Best way to test the app is have this app called Postman. If you do not already have it, you can download it, and after downloading you can run the app, and here you can, so for example, if you see here on top I have typed, so localhost is a machine on which I am running it, 8080 is the default port number, we will see how to change and all that, and /hello was our path on which we had set this endpoint. So if we send this request, if you see, this is the response we get. If you remember our hello world object, it had two member variables, one was name which was John Doe, other was message which was hello world and then the name. So you see that coming back as a response. So this is our very basic REST endpoint using Spring. In the next video we will go into more detail and make it a little bit more mature. So I think I will end this video here. You can add more endpoints, you can define different GET request and practice. If you have any comment, please write below in the video and I will try to answer them, and watch out for the next video in next couple of days. Thank you for watching this video, and if you liked it, please subscribe it and hit the notification bell icon so that you will be notified when I post new videos. Thank you for watching. Good day.